Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. My name is Nate and today I wanted to do a very quick little wrap up of all the books that I read in January, my thoughts on them and like my overall ratings and some statistics as I like to do. I like doing these videos each month just as a bit of a reflection for myself. It's a nice little way to round out the month. I did not read a ton in January. I think I only completed 5 books in the month. I have got 3 books that are ongoing, so I'm going to just briefly talk about them now. The first one is one that is not going to get finished until the end of the year, and that is War and Peace. I did in fact start this. I found out basically, I looked at the Spotify chapters and this has 365 chapters, so I decided to read a chapter a day. I am a bit behind. I'm about 8 chapters behind or so over the next few days I'll be reading 2. I'm over 100 pages now into this mammoth. And I'll be honest, it's really highlighted to me that I know crap all about European history, if I'm honest. This is set around the time of Bonaparte. Know nothing about it. But yeah, it's been interesting so far. Not necessarily enjoyable, but it's been interesting so far. Yeah, but I do intend to carry on with this, so I won't mention this every month, but this is a continuous read throughout the months, so I have read a bit of that. And then 2 books that I do plan to finish in February, so I'll just again briefly touch on them, is Red Rising. I've only got 1 part left of this. This was a book me and my sister are technically reading as a buddy read. We were doing it in parts and then doing a part maybe like every few weeks. We've realised this doesn't really work for us. She is someone that can only really read 1 book at a time. I can juggle a few, so she hasn't really read anything else because she has this kind of ongoing. So instead we're just going to kind of read them in our own time and then talk about them together. But yeah, 1 part left of this. Have been really enjoying it. This is a sci-fi adult dystopian series. Been really interesting actually. Very different from, well, I don't actually know if I had many expectations of it, but it's been, yeah, been very enjoyable. Been quite illuminating in some of the stuff that's going on in it. Very interesting, different paths of what I thought it was going to be. So yeah, definitely will be finishing this in February. And then lastly, I never managed to actually finish Paladin's Grace. I am about 100 pages in at the moment. It's the 3rd of February, so I will talk about my overall thoughts in February's wrap up. But so far, I'm enjoying it. This is a adult cozy romantasy kind of about a paladin and a perfumer. And so far, it is quite sweet. It has just had a kind of plot development of, I'm guessing, what is going to be the underlining plot, or the overlining plot, and the romance is going to be the underlining plot. But yeah, I'm interested to see where it goes. So for January, I did finish 5 books, and I'm going to kind of go through them in the order in which I finished them. So starting off was A Christmas Leftover, and that was the Killer's Christmas List. I actually think I probably finished this maybe in December, but for some reason my Goodreads is showing January, and I never spoke about it, so this is, I'll talk about it here. This is a kind of cop detective story about a guy who was recently transferred to a new position in the police, and then there is a murderer going around killing people and leaving their bodies and kind of leaving them with a Christmas list. It's kind of also told in like a 2 different timeline perspective, and it changes up the narrative of the perspectives as well, so you don't quite know who the second perspective is from. You are assuming it's from the killer, but you can't kind of work out who that is. I think overall this was actually quite a well done story. I think it's the first novel this author has written as well, and I did quite enjoy it. I thought the kind of detective plot, the actual kind of crime that was going on, was interesting and was like well fleshed out. There were definitely some added in kind of red herrings that I thought were very unnecessary in this book, and there were elements that were just like okay, but overall I did enjoy this book. I think I gave it a 3-star though. It was nothing that left a grand impression on me, but it has a sequel that I probably will read because I did enjoy this enough. Again though, I think it's another kind of Christmassy one, so I'll probably wait till next year, but I did enjoy this overall. I thought it was quite fun. That one I read and also listened to a little bit of the audiobook, and then I had my first full audiobook listened to, and that was Brigands and Bread Knives. I never know if I'm saying that first word correctly. This is by Travis Baldree and it's the 3rd book in his Legends and Latte series. This follows a character that you meet in the 2nd book, Fern, as she is basically going to where our main character Viv lives, and she's going to set up a new bookshop there, but she's feeling a bit disjointed with her life and ends up getting drunk and ending up accidentally stowing away with this like elven warrior who is like quite famous for being like a famous bounty hunter, and she ends up kind of stumbling along with her on her travels, and it's kind of like a bit of a exploration journey about like, I guess, trying to find your purpose again later in life when you've lost passion for what you originally had passion for. And I found it really interesting actually. I did quite enjoy it. This is like a cozy adult fantasy series. At first I wasn't that interested. I didn't necessarily care that much about Fern as a character, if I'm honest. So I wasn't like, when I realized it was from her perspective, which is different from the first 2, which were both from this perspective, I was a bit kind of cautious going into it, but I ended up really enjoying it actually. I gave it a 3.5 star overall. These are books that I enjoy to listen to, but are not ones that are like favorites of mine. But I did quite enjoy it, and I think I related as well a bit to Fern's story as someone who is not that old, but a bit later in life and not sure what the hell you want to do with your life, but still looking at a lot of time left, hopefully, in life to do stuff with. So I did find that I quite related to her story, and a lot of Travis Baldree's works they are female centered, and like female friendships are quite a big part of them, and so Fern's friendship with the elven warrior, whose name I can't remember for the life of me, as well as there was a kind of third goblin woman involved. I really liked that. I really liked that kind of progression of friendship, and also kind of finding her own purpose and not just clinging on to someone else's purpose of what could be for life. And I think I preferred this one and the second book to Necessary Legends and Lattes because I feel like there's been a bit more action involved in them. This one has a travel element. I am someone who is a fan of a travel story, and so like it's kind of along the way they end up getting hunted a little bit by this other orc creature woman, and yeah, interesting stuff. I did quite enjoy it in the end. This was a 3.5 overall. Then we have my only completely physical read of the month, and that was James and the Giant's Peach by Roald Dahl. This is obviously a children's fantasy story about a young boy, James, who lives with his two aunties who are very mean to him. He ends up receiving magical beans from this guy, ends up dropping the beans, they go into the ground and are eaten by all these creatures as well as a peach, and then he comes out the next day, there's this giant peach and all these giant insects live inside the peach, and he ends up becoming friends with them, and the peach escapes, and they go off on this like little adventure. I actually ended up quite enjoying this. This is a very whimsical kind of storyline, but I actually feel like I actually ended up really enjoying the kind of way that this narrative was told. I guess it hits on a lot of nostalgia for obviously having read this probably as a child or having been read it too, as well as other stories like this. So like the writing style, I really enjoyed that kind of the way that it was framed out and how everything was very matter of factly, but it was also kind of hella random in its like description and stuff, but I did quite enjoy it. I do think the ending was slightly rushed, which I don't know if that's like a weird thing because it's like a very short book and it's a children's story, and also it kind of felt a bit random in that kind of towards the end, James just randomly broke into song to kind of wrap up the story. It was very random in that sense, but I did enjoy it. And yeah, it was very nostalgic. I definitely have read it before, or I know the story. I haven't watched the movie in quite a while, so I might redo that again, just as a kind of like fun nostalgia point for me. But yeah, I did enjoy this, but I overall gave it a 3-star because yeah, it was enjoyable, but it wasn't a favourite by any means. Also, just to cut in, because I realised I didn't mention this, I do want to say though, even though I potentially will go on and read other Roald Dahl stuff in the future, I wanted to just kind of clarify that I obviously in no way, shape or form agree with Roald Dahl as a person. He was anti-Semitic, racist, and very fatphobic, and that does shine through in some of his books. There are a couple of paragraphs, a couple of sentences in James and the Giant Peach where that is very evident, and I did go into this book knowing that, so like it wasn't shocking to me to see that, but it wasn't nice to see that. And I definitely think the kind of conversation of separating the art from the artist comes up with someone like Roald Dahl. The reason I'm okay with kind of reading his books and talking about it is because he is dead, and he has been dead for a while, and in no way in shape or form monetarily benefits from my reading of his books. I mean, I bought this book secondhand anyway, but you know, but I did really want to acknowledge that those elements are in Roald Dahl's books. So yeah, I just wanted to clarify though that my enjoyment of this book does not mean that I in any way, shape or form agree with Roald Dahl as a person or his beliefs. Like, I didn't want to say that I liked this book and not have that clarified, if that makes sense. I know obviously I have a really small YouTube channel and like not a lot of people see my videos, but I didn't want anyone to watch this and think that I in any way, shape or form agreed with Roald Dahl as a person, because I absolutely do not. And I think on the topic of separating the art from the artist is a really interesting one and is also a kind of layered one, and I think it is slightly more cut and dry with someone like Roald Dahl who can no longer benefit financially from consuming his media, but I do think having the awareness of the sort of person that he was is important when consuming anything from that author, because it does affect the way that some of the characters are portrayed, and I do think that's important, and like there is no separating that really from his work because it does come up, and there was a couple of sentences in James and the Giant Peach where it came up. I didn't want that to go like unacknowledged on my channel when I'm speaking about this specific book, because yeah, I did like this book, I did enjoy it, and I do think a lot of that is probably also a nostalgia play because a lot of Roald Dahl stuff was from my childhood. I grew up in the 90s, but yeah, I didn't want it to go unacknowledged. I hope that all makes sense. So we have Murder Road by Simone St. James. This was a mostly physical read, but I did listen to a few chapters, and this was presented as a horror. It definitely is not really. It's more of a thriller with some elements of a horror, or I guess a supernatural thriller. It's about a couple, Eddie and April, and they are on their honeymoon, on the way to the honeymoon, I should say. They end up going on a wrong road, end up down this lane. They see a young woman off the side who they think is a hitchhiker. They pull over to pick her up. It's late at night, it's dark, and she gets in the back of the car, and they basically see that she has been stabbed. They take her to the hospital. She dies in the hospital, and they become the main suspects. They are then told they have to stay in the town while this kind of investigation goes on. I liked the story overall. The writing was very simplistic, but I thought it was very, like, easy enough to engage with, and I feel like the action elements, the anticipation elements, the kind of thrillery elements were written very well and very engaging. The first 60 pages of this book was incredibly fast-paced and really threw me into it, but then it did kind of dip and wane a bit throughout the story, so I will say the pacing sometimes was a bit off, but I did overall, yeah, quite enjoy this story. I liked Eddie and April. I liked their relationship together, and I liked their kind of like deciding on to figure out this mystery that was going on with these because there was multiple murders on this like road throughout time. It's so like them kind of trying to uncover it and figure it out and what was going on. It was wrapped up in a way that I was like quite satisfied with in terms of story wise. It was not in terms of writing wise, and so this only got a 3-star because there was a time skip at the end that I didn't like. It felt unnecessary, and it felt unnecessary in that it kind of did it in a way to then like kind of just tell you everything that happened after the fact, which is really something I find frustrating in books. Like, it was done after a very significant action scene, and so instead of us having to like read the fallout of that scene as it happens, we are just told about it in retrospect, which I do not like as a storytelling method at all. So that did bump the rating down for me, but overall I thought this book was fine. I probably would read from the author again. I don't think I would physically bother reading anything from the author again, but I would be open to like listening to audiobooks from them. But yeah, definitely as a thriller, this was not, with again supernatural elements, because there are like elements of like ghosts and stuff in this book, but yeah, it wasn't really horrifying. Although I do think Simone St. James writ those scenes quite well. I didn't necessarily find them overly scary, but they were eerie and like a bit creepy. So I thought that was done very well. It was a fine read overall. It's probably not one in a year's time I'm going to think much about, but for my time with it, I did quite enjoy it. And then my fifth and final read for the month was my favourite of the month, and that was A Matter of Murder by Tirzah Price. This is the second book in the Lizzie and Darcy murder mystery and the kind of fifth book in this kind of Jane Austen murder mystery overall. This centres on Lizzie and Darcy on the fallout of the second one. It has a different case, but there is a kind of continuous plot line that's gone through Lizzie's story that is kind of coming to a culmination. She's being threatened as a fallout of some stuff that's happened in earlier books. Her dad decides to take his whole family and they go and fill Netherfield Park with the Bingleys. They do this as a way to kind of get out of London to try and like steer off from this thing happening while the police investigate this kind of like person that's threatening Lizzie. At this place, they come across a dead body that's been hidden in the chimney for a long time. And so Lizzie ends up trying to investigate it and figure out what was going on, while also this kind of underlying plot of her being threatened is going on. I just really enjoyed it. I really like these books. I think Tirzah Price does a really nice balance between the very slight bits of romance that goes on, but also the mystery, as well as kind of keeping the kind of nice elements from Pride and Prejudice and the Jane Austen world that I really like. This obviously has strayed quite far from Pride and Prejudice. The first book with Lizzie and Darcy, Pride and Premeditation, followed the novel not overly religiously, but like point for point, it followed it pretty well, whereas now we are in completely different territory. And yeah, I really like this as well as a switch up from, we'd spent a lot of time in London for most of the previous books, so having a little country visit was quite nice. Yeah, seeing the kind of like country elements, this kind of mystery going on, and yeah, I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this book series by her. I'm all caught up now on everything that this author has written, I think, so I am eagerly anticipating what is going to be coming next. But yeah, really enjoyed this book, the conclusion of this duology. Definitely would recommend it if you like YA murder mystery stuff, as with Regency elements involved. If none of those buzzwords for you, don't read it. But yeah, if that's kind of a thing that tickles your interest, I would recommend this series. I've really enjoyed it. And this one was a 4-star, and this was my favourite read of the month. So that is the 5 books that I've read throughout the month. So I ended up having, genre-wise, I read kind of 2 thrillers, 1 mystery, 1 adult cozy fantasy, and 1 child's fantasy. And then I had 2 mixed, 2 audios, and 1 physical read. So yeah, I don't think it was too bad overall. It was slumping a bit in January, so that's why my reading really wasn't up as much. I'm feeling pretty good for February. I'm really into reading. I've already like taken off some stuff, so enjoying what I'm reading. That was though what I read for January. If you want to let me know what your favourite read for January was, I would love to know. Love hearing what you guys have been loving reading. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I will see you again in another video, hopefully soon. Bye guys.